as we'd like to say. We are finally live. It has been a little bit of a helter-skelter morning, but we are live. Like I said, we might be having a little bit of a disturbance here. Hopefully you can hear me nice and clear. Sorry
Yes,
about
I
that. I
can.
just wanted to check if you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
And we are literally trying to deal with umpteen technical issues that just seem to testing. Hopefully I am audible now. Hello.
I want to get you. I hope we do have him on the other side. And if you're not able to get Nyumba, I can get him. So of
And so
course
all
you
the
can
audience
still
is checking
call.
if I am audible.
Okay. So I'm about to gate him. If you're not able to gate him on the mainstream, you're calling on 0771616290 and on Facebook. Gate to comment in the comment section.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Markets Mindset Monday to everyone. Sorry, we seem to be having a little bit of a sound glitch, but we will be having my co-host Stephanie should be getting back on the air at any given moment as we speak. Good morning to you, Stephanie, and how are you doing?
Good morning, Munyumba. How are you?
Well, trying to get through all these technical issues today, just because everything's being thrown at us. And good morning to our audience. Thank you very much for your patience. It is Mindset Monday, and we've had to really have a strong mindset to get through a lot of what's happening today in the morning. But today, Stephanie, we are continuing for purpose of time. We are continuing on our Power to Change series, which we have been doing on Mindset Mondays every single week. And this week, it was because we're in the habit section, we're doing what we call Stop Before You Flop. In other words, how to deal with bad habits and how to get rid of them. Because yes, we have good habits that we need to start, but we also have bad habits that we need to stop. So a little quick recap that we've had for everyone is, remember, we've been talking about change, and change has two things: the desire and the power. Especially now that we're in the third quarter heading towards 2024, people remember that now is the time to start setting up your ability to make your resolutions count, as opposed to starting your resolutions on the 1st of January, hoping that you'll be able to get through it. Wouldn't you now start to build up the momentum and power to actually do them? So power is the ability and the capacity to influence an outcome, while desire is longing, hoping, and wishing for that specific outcome. So why are habits bad to stop? And this is something that we picked up from Pastor Craig Rochelle, is that there's something called the pain-pleasure trade-off. Every bad habit in your life, Stephanie, and I'm sure we can all attest to this, every bad habit is something that feels good up front but hurts later. And every good habit feels bad up front but is pleasurable later. So the brain seeks pleasure and leans towards bad habits automatically. So that is one of the reasons why bad habits are so hard to stop. Your brain is wired for minimum pain and maximum pleasure. But unfortunately, bad habits feel good at the beginning but hurt later. So we struggle with something we like to call stage one thinking. So I want to quickly just introduce this concept, Stephanie. I don't know if you've ever heard of the economist Thomas Sowell. I'll throw that out to you. But uh, and he has a concept called stage one thinking, and I want to quickly share what it means. He speaks about it from a political perspective, but he also says it's equal to the public perspective. I don't know if you're able to see this, Stephanie, or if it's clear to you. Okay. Yeah. So this is Thomas Sowell's theory of stage one thinking. Now he's talking specifically about politicians, and he says politicians propose expensive policy solutions. However, they never ask the question, what is the long-term cost and consequence? They just tend to sell you on, this is going to be good, we're solving a problem right now, everything immediate, effective, immediate, you're going to feel the benefits right now. And they tell you all these dreams of these immediate policies. We're gonna tax the rich, and we're gonna get all these things, and we're gonna subsidize your life. Yeah, and we all scream and we vote. Then what happens is they tax the rich. The rich decide, oh, so we're just gonna close our businesses, and now people, you can see if you can take taxes when there are no businesses to tax. And then what happens is the rich move all their capital and their wealth out the country, and then you have nothing to tax. And this is where the problem starts happening. So by the time the cost and consequences manifest, usually which are usually disastrous, those who usually set the policy in motion are long gone, 5-10 years away. They're usually long gone, and often they derive all the political benefits, but they feel none of the cost. So the actual results of a policy matter more than the good intentions the policymakers purport. And that is one of the things he's trying to say. Now, that's at the political level. So let's talk about it even at a personal level. Stephanie, can you think of stage one thinking basically means you're only thinking of an action and the immediate benefit it can give you, but you don't ask the question, what is the long-term benefit? Can you think about maybe some examples in regular life where we actually do this? Stephanie, are you there? Okay, so with everyone who's following us, there are plenty of examples where people introduce stage one thinking into their life. People have a tendency to take out loans without thinking, okay, what's the long-term pain that I might actually expose myself to? Yes, I will buy this wonderful car or TV or phone, and I've got this huge bill I now have to pay, but I get my phone right now. So instead of saving up front, so stage one thinking is where you borrow for something you could have saved for, as opposed to doing it and then you force yourself to. And everyone always has this conversation about debt, but then they never try to look at the discipline levels that they lack. They never ask themselves, what will happen if this whole thing goes wrong? Because we judge things by intention and fail horrendously to judge, to actually learn from, to actually look at what could happen. Now, Thomas Sowell said he picked up on this idea of stage one thinking and the misapplication of principles and policies because he was in an economics school one day, and one day his economics professor asked him, what policy do you favor? He had a strong opinion and he said, this is a policy that I favor. Then his professor asked him, okay, then what will happen next? Then he struggled to actually understand, okay, I actually have to start thinking about the consequences of what I've proposed. So let me give you a simple example, Stephanie. Everyone who's watching and listening with us, right now, one of the biggest issues right now is transportation costs. Fuel prices are through the roof, okay? And they're going to keep rising higher and higher. I've given you my predictions that we're probably going to see a 33 kwacha pump price at the end of this month. And then we're probably going to see even more in the following month. It's probably going to jump all the way up to 35 because the global prices are pushing higher and higher and higher. We don't have the FX rate to oppose it, and it's going to take long-term structural changes. But stage one thinking is the government just has to intervene and subsidize fuel. We need the prices cheap. That's the immediate reaction that we have because we're just thinking about our pain and we just want relief right now. Okay. But then we ask the question, okay, then what will happen when the government intervenes? Okay, the government will have to buy dollars from the market and spend them on fuel. So if the government is on the market buying dollars, then what happens? Oh, well, the government will have to increase that therefore the government will put pressure for a higher level of dollars as well, the higher cost of dollars, because the government will be taking dollars out of circulation from the system even more, and therefore it will increase the amount, the cost of a US dollar, aka the exchange rate. Then what will happen? Well, the price of things that are imported will then drastically jump up. Things like cooking oil, which 66% of it is imported. Then what will happen? Well, the very same inflation that you were trying to dodge, except it's now just going to sneak in from a different angle. And also the cost of fertilizer will also go up because you'll have a weaker currency as well. So does the government have, the question you need to keep asking yourself is, do they have the capacity to withstand the long-term implications of them trying to subsidize fuel in the middle of a debt negotiation? The answer is no. But it just requires asking the question, and if you want to get past stage one thinking, this is where our worst impulses, most of our bad habits, the majority of our bad habits as people, and that's a government thing. Now I want to bring it down to personal. The majority of our bad habits as people stem from the fact that we never ask the simple question, how will this play out in the next 5 to 10 years? And we don't answer that question honestly. We use it for debate because we just want to win an argument and get what we want because we just want what we want. But we never honestly really interrogate something and say, how is this going to play out in the next 5 to 10 years? When somebody says increase taxes on the rich, how does that play out in the next 5 to 10 years? When someone says, let's just subsidize things, how does that play out in the next 5 to 10 years? When someone says, when you're looking at a loan for something that is a consumable, okay, the car that you are going to get a loan for is going to depreciate in value, and therefore the loan that you're going to have is going to do what? Then then what are you going to be looking at in the next 5 to 10 years? How does every decision you make or everything you desire, how does it play out in the next 5 to 10 years? Once you can start to adopt the question of how does this play out in the next 5 to 10 years, the majority of your bad habits don't look so good, because the allure of everything bad is the instant gratification. And instant gratification is only cured by adopting a long-term perspective to things. So if you want to cure instant gratification, you must get rid of short-term perspective. And you must adopt a long-term perspective and ask the question, how does this play out in 5 to 10 years? What are the implications of this in 5 to 10 years? Because here's the problem about the pleasure-pain trade-off, and I've said this before. Every pleasure and pain always follow one another. You get to choose which one comes first, okay? A good habit has pain up front and pleasure later. A bad habit has pleasure up front and pain later. And here's the funny thing about pleasure-pain. The one which comes second is always bigger than the one which comes first. So if you take pain up front, then the pleasure is greater in the future. If you take pleasure up front, then the pain is greater in the future. We've tried a lot of these policies before as a country, and the problem always boils down to, at an individual level, we apply stage one thinking in our lives. And this is why we struggle with change, because positive change and lasting change requires abandoning of stage one thinking. So in order to do that, we need to combat the pleasure-pain trade-off. Now, let's understand bad habits a little bit. There's something called erosion versus landslide. Now, we often summarize the worst things that happen in our lives into an instant, a moment. Things just went bad and it was horrible. When really it wasn't. It was a sequence of bad events and unfortunate decisions that slowly worked away our lives. Okay, so it wasn't the big economic event that hit your life poorly and turned your life upside down. It was a series of 5 years of bad economic habits or financial habits that exposed you to a macroeconomic downturn where maybe your business that you worked for shut down, but you had zero savings. You lived for 5, 10 years, zero savings, no investments, and the moment something went wrong, it twisted you upside down. But the reality is, for those 5 years, you were carrying that risk. So these are the issues that you need to look at. What are the sequence of events that has led you to this situation where you have actually eroded yourself to the point where one gust of wind literally blew you apart. It talks about Samson took 56,250 steps to get from Bethel to Gaza. That was a long journey. All those he could have turned around and stopped. So usually the downfall is a series of bad choices and not an abrupt fall. For example, most of the earth is actually destroyed by erosion than it is by landslide. So there is an erosion of your bad decisions. So bad decisions don't destroy you instantly, but they do erode you gradually. And I want somebody, if you're listening to this, write that one down. Bad decisions do not destroy you instantly, but they erode you gradually. And one day, when the rain and the pain is hard enough, they will destroy you. I just want to check if people are actually listening. And most of your financial bad decisions. Now, often you have to look at being controlled by your urges. You know who you could be, who you want to be. You want to be better with money. You want to be an entrepreneur. You want to be something. But unfortunately, you are controlled by your urges to be lazy. You are controlled by your urges to take shortcuts. You are controlled by your urges of instant gratification. So you really have to look at the core why in your life. Like, what is the real reason? And you need to overpower your basic urges that usually control you. And you have to, in order to stop bad habits, you need to shift from stage one thinking. You need to ask everything, and you need to ask the question, this that I'm going to do, what is the long-term implication of what I'm going to do? Whether it's from a work perspective, whether it's from a money perspective, whether it's from a fitness perspective, family, what is it that you're doing? What are the long-term implications of what you are doing? If you think of every single action and habit as a vote towards the person that you are going to become, and you think in 5 to 10 year time horizons, you have to ask the question, this very action I'm taking, what direction is it taking me? And that is the most important thing. It's not about what is the feeling it's giving you. What direction is this action taking me? What direction does saving and investing take you versus spending and borrowing? What direction do these things take you is the most important question you need to ask yourself. And think about what you stand to lose over the long period of time. So as long as you broaden your time horizons, your susceptibility to bad habits is much lower. The moment you shorten your time horizons of sight, your susceptibility to bad habits is much higher. This is why I always say that a person must stop operating in plain sight, and you must have insight and foresight. Foresight is extremely important because it helps you be less susceptible to bad habits. The shorter term you're thinking, the more susceptible you are to doing bad things. And then obviously use the habit loop as a way to try and break down these bad habits. Now remember that there's seven key points, 7 components to a good habit, but these are also components to a bad habit. So if you want to dismantle the bad habits in your life, what are the visual triggers? What are the visual triggers that make you spend? What are the emotional triggers that make you spend? What are how can you preload good decisions to counteract the bad decisions? How can you get rid of the connecting habits that lead to the bad habits that you partake in? How can you engineer your environment to be more susceptible towards you doing the good things? How can you make it difficult? How can you add so many layers that doing a bad habit takes you more than 10 minutes to start, and it takes you more than 7 minutes? It takes you more than 10 minutes to start, and it takes you more than 7 steps to do. How can you do it so that you can assess who are the people who are encouraging this bad habit and doing it? And how can you avoid repeating it over and over again? So today, I know it was a very short period, but that is one of the things that I wanted to really highlight today, because this has been the struggle for most people, including myself, over a long period of my life, is how do you get past stage one thinking? How do you start to adopt a more long-term perspective of life so that you look at temptations less for the instant gratification and more for the long-term implications? That is kind of the way that you have to look at things. If you look at everything in 5 to 10 year implications, your probability of making bad decisions or being subject to lesser urges is always going to be much, much less. So that is the cure. Is it an easy cure to administer? No. Does it help people to actually think a bit longer term? Yes. Every benefit on your life will probably start by just you taking a long-term horizon. Even the policies you back at a national level will be much better if you take a long-term horizon. It's what helped countries like China. It's what helped most countries develop. It is a long-term time horizon. That is the sole difference between us and our Asian neighbors. Asians took a long-term time horizon to their economic development. Africans have taken an instant gratification instant gratification approach, and we're stuck in cycles of start and stop, failure constantly with policy because we are always looking at things in the short term. And that is a reflection on also how we take life ourselves as individuals. It starts because at an individual level, when you tell someone investing to build wealth takes 10 to 20 years, 20 years, that's too long. 10 years, yeah, that's too, will I even be alive? Those are the questions people start to answer. And those reactions are the main reason why, even at a national level, you vote for instant things, or you push for instant things, or you demand instant things. And as a result, there's always a lot of pain down the line. And we can never remove poverty. Why has Asia moved from 90% poverty down to the 20s, while Africa has stayed in the 70s and 80% of poverty? Because short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. That's really the difference between Asia and Africa. They think long-term. They take long-term positions on things. They are patient. We are not. And that's where the problem is. So I don't know if I'll have Stephanie back. Tomorrow we'll be discussing building your career capital. It's a conversation we've been having about the income conversation to also help with people, and it also deals with the debt issue, because it's usually debt always comes as an issue of income and not us managing our personal incomes better. So with that, thank you to all who joined us today. We did have a bit of a glitch. Hopefully we'll have a much better takeoff tomorrow. With that, wish you a wonderful day. Stephanie, if you can hear me, God bless.